Welcome to Heartmenders Live with Carol Gordon, where Jesus has been changing hearts and lives since 1987. I'm your host, and my guest today is Robin Jones. Robin and I have known each other for a long time. She interviewed my husband and I years and years ago when we were just first getting started, and she was with KQCV.
That's correct.
And so we've seen each other off and on, worked together some, and she's had a wonderful years of service to the Lord in various things that she's done, and I'm very excited in what she's doing now, so we want to find out about all of that.
Well, great. In fact, I did have to chuckle when you said we've known each other years. I'm to the point in my life that I like that general years, not like, decades or 30 years or whatever, but it has been years.
Yes, but they've been fruitful years for
yes.
you, because we've gotten to work together in different venues. I know with the group that you were with for a number of times that the governor started,
right,
and seen you at the meetings that you put on, and then my son was working with you.
Right.
And so it's just been a good friendship all the way through, and I'm so glad to be invited to what you're doing now. I don't always get to come, but I'm thrilled to be invited, and I will get to come this month.
Okay.
Where the schedule is and all, I can make it this month.
Cool.
So, I usually have those at a time that I'm not available, or I've got something else already scheduled, but this time I can make it. So.
Well, the job you were referencing relative to the governor was I worked in the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, and that was created under Governor Keating, and there was two directors. I was the second one, and the office, I was there about 6 years, and then they eliminated the office. It was all this configuring for political organization type of thing. But what you're referring to, which I think is a fabulous outreach, is in that office we started what we call the Compassionate Care Gathering. That's the one you're talking about, right? Yeah. And we found that even though there was a handful of networking and collaborative meetings of groups interested in particular things, there wasn't really one that was overly friendly to faith-based groups, and there wasn't one that was cast the net in a compassionate kind of way. There's one that's focused on kids, which of course is compassionate, but it's focused on kids and all that. So what this group is, and really anybody listening, I think this is a fabulous thing to have in any community. It's a Compassionate Care Gathering, and it's any organization, faith-based or not, that is engaged in compassionate services and compassionate ministry. And the benefit is just amazing, because there's two big benefits. One is you get to know these other people relationally. And that's really what collaboration and the kingdom of God is all about, is relationship. You can't function and serve in a vacuum.
That is so true. I'm presently writing a book on connections, which is all about relationship, and that Jesus' prayer for us to be one, it can happen without relationships and connections, and if we avoid those or discount them, we are rejecting the heart of the Lord, really.
Yeah, and of course I agree. The challenge in our culture is we don't live in community. I mean, we maybe go to some place like church, or we go to, the Y or whatever, but we don't culturally live in community that much.
That's right.
And it's such a challenge.
It is.
But anyway, so these Compassionate Care gatherings are really for anyone. We call them kindred spirits, and it's beyond the networking and relationship. I've been shocked that someone who would be at a health clinic for years didn't know about some service over here.
Oh, I
know.
So
it's very informative.
Yes, it is. I have found that on these programs, that someone will come on that is in a certain area and doesn't know about someone else that I have met that's in a similar area, so I get to connect them up. and that has been just a blessing to me to be able to facilitate some things like that. And
well, if networking were a spiritual gift, that would be my gift. But I know it's not listed in the lists in the New Testament. But I do. I'm passionate about that and the connections and just networking.
And Steve is too. He is a master networker, and I have never thought that I was, but I found that I am doing much more of it because I believe that the connections is very vital to the Lord. Because unless you meet someone, you'll never progress to loving them. And you'll never choose to pray for them if you don't know them. And so networking is highly important in what the Lord is doing, because He is doing some things and moving in the world to reconnect His body. And I think networking is a big part of that.
Right, and I agree with what you said, but I would add, though, that whether we, and I don't always get this, but whether we meet or even like someone, we're still commanded to love them.
Exactly.
It just makes it a little easier when you have a relationship with them.
But that's
in
exactly
a
right.
Spirit sort
That's
of way.
That's exactly right. And a lot of the time, of course, a lot of hurts come out of relationships as well, when there's different kinds of things happen. But on a general scheme of things, if we don't know somebody, we will never have a heart for the thing that's important to them, the cause that they're giving their life for, and we can add our prayers to help them, and that is one of the ways we become more one. And so I think it's very important. How did I know this need existed in the world unless I've met somebody that knows it or is suffering from it or is passionate about it? And I won't ever think to pray about it if I don't know about it.
It definitely makes for a rich and deeper relationship.
It does, across the board. And it gives you so much more compassion yourself. Your compassion grows because of other people's passion about some particular need that they have encountered or has touched their heart, and usually it's because they have suffered in that area or a loved one has. And so it's all about relationships.
Right. And redeeming everyone's story, whether it's a story of joy or whether it's a story of pain, it's all redeemable. It is so much so. And often you get to hear those stories of redemption. And that is a blessing. Just gives glory to the Lord. How did you hook up with, tell me about how SALT got started and how you got involved with it. Well, SALT, which stands for Salt and Light Leadership Training, grew out of the heart of a fellow by the name of Wes Lang. He was the DA in Oklahoma County, and
is our friend and has been on the show.
That's why I knew that some of your audience would be familiar with him. And one time, gosh, I don't know how long ago. Let's say 6 or 7 years ago, he had received an award called Salt and Light Award, and it was from another ministry group, and as he thought about the receiving of that award, he thought, now, how am I being salt and light in Oklahoma City? And so he looked up the others who had received that award. And two examples that I remember, Kirk Humphreys, which is, of course, a former mayor, a very highly committed Christian and a community leader, Kirk Humphreys. And David Green, very committed Christian, of course, who he and his family own the Hobby Lobby, Mardell, and Hemispheres. Those two men had also won the Salt and Light Award. So Wes went to them and said, what are we doing, in Oklahoma City to make Oklahoma City a salt and light, a place of salt and light, like God or Jesus would refer to in the New Testament? And so it's a much longer story, of course. So Salt and Light Leadership Training was birthed out of that. And what it is each school year, Wes recruits a class of about 35 people Christians, of people of faith, Christians who are of influential positions in the city. So there might be a CEO of a company, but there also might be the head of a ministry that is really making an impact in a neighborhood. So he recruits a class of 35 people, and they go through a year of biblical worldview training. And then at the end of the year, they are encouraged to leverage their influence, their skills, and their passion for the common good and for the kingdom in Oklahoma City. So, and again, all of this is a much longer story. So we're in the midst of our 5th class, and I came on about a year ago, and what I do is sort of the next step after they've gone through this year of biblical worldview training. The way I explained it is I said to Wes, it was like you got these people all dressed up and nowhere to go. Because these are obviously very intelligent people, but you still need some sort of on-ramps or something to move on to the next step. So that's what I do. I call it community engagement.
Oh, that is great. That is great.
Yeah, and I don't know to what extent he may have explained this when he was on before, but our model is after William Wilberforce. Are you familiar with William Wilberforce?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if you've talked about him on your show, but he was a man in the early 1800s in London who was the tip of the spear of eliminating slavery in England. And he did it in community, in connection, with other people of influence, a vast majority Christians, but not all, and changed he changed the face of world history, in my opinion, but also starting in London by eradicating slavery.
And it wasn't easy, and it took time.
It took forever. But what a lot of people don't know, and some people might not be aware of the movie Amazing Grace, which I love. It only tells a little sliver of his story. But at the time that William Wilberforce, as a very passionate Christian, was on this path to eliminate slavery, politically, socially, sociologically, in every aspect of life, all of his peeps, that's what I call all of his peeps, his community, they started 69 other societies, which we would maybe call them nonprofits now, that addressed all the social ills of that time. Prostitution, alcoholism, a big one. They were so cruel to animals back then, and the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals was started by Christians in the early 1800s, and it still exists today.
Praise the Lord.
Isn't that fun?
That is wonderful.
And so that's kind of, we're trying to model after William Wilberforce and his community of people who lived in Clapham. They lived in a geographical area called Clapham. And by creating, we don't call them societies, today we're calling them circles, and just to address the various social ills that break the heart of God in Oklahoma City. And the big overview word would be city transformation.
Right. Well, that's what I find on the this program is the Lord just puts me in touch with people that are doing those things, and so I have them on and get to interview them and find out what their passion is and what they're doing, and often connect them with someone else that they haven't met yet that's doing the same sort of thing.
Well, I know you recently had Clarence Hill on, and Clarence is one of the alumni of SALT. He's gone through the SALT and Life leadership training. And of course, marriage would be something that breaks the heart of God because of how in disarray it is in our culture.
Yeah, and that's my passion.
Well, and and Clarence's and Wes's, Lane's. And I'm sure all of you would have a heart to see marriage exalted in our city. Well, in the world, but in our city. So yes, you're right. There's people, there's people everywhere.
Yes.
Little people. Clarence isn't little. In fact, we were just talking about how tall he was. But there's people, there's individuals everywhere that together, working together, you have much higher velocity of making a difference.
Yes, that's so true. I've thought of a couple of other people that I need to be sure that they get invited to the ball this weekend, and I don't know why I didn't think about it last week, but that's on my plate for today to be sure and contact them.
Well, and the ball you're referring to, of course, is the Sweethearts Ball. Isn't that what they call it?
Yeah, Sweethearts Ball. Eye to Eye, our marriage community's Sweetheart Ball, which is mostly an annual event. I don't think they had one last year, but this is their 13th one, and I have attended one. Now Steve and Karen, my son and daughter-in-law, said, "You can't go, Mom. You're not a couple." And I say, "Okay." They'd go, and but one year Clarence and Greg and some of those really put the arm on me. I had to come, and they just were so honoring to me, and as someone who has stood for marriage in the community for years and years, and seen a lot of marriages healed through heart menders. And so they prevailed upon me. I'm going again this year.
Well, and I didn't listen to the whole interview with Clarence, but I'm guessing he mentioned, and correct me if I'm not saying the right word, I think they're having a special feature called Spouse Got Talent.
Yes.
And that just sounds hysterical.
Yes, I know.
Risky, but hysterical. So.
Yeah, that's that. They have such a good time, and
yeah.
and it's such a lovely event, and they take couples pictures, and there's dancing, and it's a real romantic atmosphere. And
so when you go, it's not romantic,
no.
it's rotic, because it's romantic without the man.
Yeah.
I learned that in Christian college. So.
Well, I get to enjoy watching
right.
the interactions and stuff like that. Yes, and so a lot of connections. I met a couple there the time I went before, and she's been on on the show, and then a bunch of her friends have been on the show. You know, it just grows like that. But people, you know, just anybody that catches a glimpse of God's point of view, as you say about marriage, how vital it is to Him that we get marriage and family right, and we have it in such disarray that there could be hundreds of people working on marriage, and every one of them would have plenty to do.
Right.
Plenty to do. And I've been so graced to have prayed for many marriages over the years. Recently, a lady said she wanted to come by and see me. She's from Houston, and she was going to be going to Tulsa to visit a daughter in college, and she'd come by before with a couple of her kids. Well, 25 years ago, she and her husband had married, and they had been told they could never have children. And so we were praying with them for their new marriage to get off to a good start, and they were having some rocky things. He'd been married before, and so we prayed them through some things, and it included that, and that they would like to have children. We prayed for that. So I opened the door. She was at the door with a couple of her kids, and then they kept getting out of the van. And I knew that she had a number of children. I had never met all 8.
Oh my, they went from not being able to have any children to
8
having 8
children.
Okay, making it up for that lost time, I guess.
Yes. So that was a real treat. Like I said, I don't see her often because she lives in South Texas. Oh, you know, that's fruit. When you see the fruit of prayers you prayed years ago. I don't take the whole credit for that, but I know we had a small part of the pie. And Louis would be so thrilled to that, because we spent a good bit of time with her back in the day, and with her husband. And so God is just good. And I had a prophetic word one time that I would not see the results of all the seed that I had sown till I got to heaven. Not expect to see it all here, but once in a while you get to see some.
And it's a gift.
Yes. That the Lord would allow us to be in on it while He's doing something. and because He does it all. He does it all. He's so beautiful and so wonderful and loves us so much. If people just knew how much He loved them, they would be running to Him. And so anytime we focus someone's on Him, which you do in the work that Salt and Light is doing, to focus on Him first, we're taking a step in the direction that He wants us to go.
Well, you know, a number of years ago when the WWJD stuff came out, What Would Jesus Do? I realize that's trite in a sense, but that's really what it comes down to. And what would Jesus do in all of these kinds of questions that you're asking?
Yes.
Now, I will say sometimes a frustrating thing for me is Christians sometimes they have a tendency to not be strategic. and not be planners and not be good stewards with their opportunities.
Yeah.
And one example would be what you were saying of working with others. Don't work in isolation. Because it's the whole synergy is a business term that you're going to get a lot more done when you work together than you are individually.
Exactly.
And so that's a part of a strategy. And so I know that many people aren't anti-strategy, they just don't think like that. So that would be something I would hope maybe people listening would think, I need to partner with such and such, or I need to think outside my box, or I need to not care who gets the credit, that kind of thing.
Right. To join together rather than isolate. Isolate is sure not the way that the Lord wants us to go. Interesting you mentioned the WWJD, because one time while that was big, I heard an ad on the a radio program that said, talked about that and said, it was inviting them to do their church, and it said, what would Jesus do? And that their answer was anything he wanted to. I thought, no, he only did what the Father told him to do.
Yeah, that was not a very good commercial.
No, it wasn't.
On my radio station
I don't think it was. But I was aghast that people didn't realize that he just didn't casually do what he wanted. He was focused, as we need to focus.
He made choices.
He made choices to obey the Father all the time, and which is what we're to do. Mm-hmm. We don't do just what we feel like. Mm-hmm. We
do and get in trouble.
Yeah, we're not supposed to do just what we feel like. We're supposed to do what we're directed by the Father in our knower, in our hearts.
And in the Bible, the written word.
Oh yes, but it will be confirmed. The Spirit will draw us to the Word. It will illuminate the Word, but it gives us the direction that we need to go, and the passion. It gives us those desires and those passions that He wants us to fulfill with in partnership with Him. He never sends us out there by ourselves, and that's why He wants us to connect with other people. So I think you all are just doing a wonderful work. I was so excited when I found out about Wes's work with the SALT, because that bringing together is just so vital. I know I'm a part of a ministerial prayer group that prays for the city and goes to churches and prays for pastors, and we have such a heart to want like groups to come together, and we're working toward that, and believing that one day we'll have big prayer meetings with all the groups coming together instead of just all the different ones doing
fragmented ones
doing their thing. Because we don't want to be fragmented. We want to be a part of the whole.
Yeah, and you talk about what SALT's doing, what I'm doing, Wes is doing. To be honest with you, what we're doing, it's so simple. I'm just a little surprised that there aren't more people doing it in what we're doing. It's just so simple, but it's strategic, which is a little different. I know there's different leadership groups out there, but this one, with the linchpin of community engagement, and it's strategic, short-term and long-term. In other words, for example, let's take foster care. We obviously, in Oklahoma City and probably in most cities in the country, we need more foster families. Well, let's engage getting more foster families, but let's have a big, hairy, audacious goal like William Wilberforce did, and saying he wanted to eliminate slavery. Let's eliminate the foster care system. Now that's ludicrous. I understand that, but so is eliminating slavery.
Yes, but if we get the families healed.
That's why it's a long process.
Then we won't
process.
have children that need foster care.
Right.
It's a different way of approaching it. Instead of putting Band-Aids on the problem, get to the root issue. And I've always been about root issues, because to get people healed and pray in your prayers for them and working with them, you have to get to the root issue. And the Lord is really good at that. He is really good at pointing out what the root issue is, and that we need to get back to basics, back to His truth and His life and His love, to be healed deeply. Because the more things go on, like children being taken away from their parents because there's wounded. What happened to those parents that they were not able to be the kind of a parents? How far back do you go to the root of the problem?
Well, it's throughout Scripture.
Exactly.
It's generational
Exactly.
issues.
And Jesus is able to reach in and correct all those generational issues in the now for each person. And He's so good at it. And it's joyful to watch Him do that in people's lives if people will just yield to Him. And so the more we connect with people that are caring and have a heart for people, the more that's going to happen. The more that's going to happen. When children, for instance, see the love of Jesus portrayed in the people that they're with, instead of seeing all kinds of dysfunction, then they're going to be on a road to healing because they know it's possible. Praise God. I'm so thrilled with what you're doing.
Well, I almost think it's unfair to get to do what I'm doing because I love it so much. It's totally in line with my passions, my skills, my experience. I feel very fortunate, very blessed.
That is wonderful. That is so wonderful. And I'm just grateful. Do you have anything new coming up, or you're doing your monthly meetings? But I know you do a lot of other things too.
Well, we have various meetings around the city that we call circles, and they are one is about jobs, about looking at work as a sacred trust, and also about creating jobs. We have some about education. Education, its focus is to make Oklahoma City the best city to raise a child. We have some on justice.
Great.
We have some on marriage. So we have a variety of things going on, around the city.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful to know. Well, I'm just really thrilled that you could come. If you would like to get in touch with Robin, her email is robin.jones@SALT.com, and she would be glad to correspond with you if you want to know more about what she's doing. If you want to be in on her, particularly on her compassionate care, if you have a cause that you want to meet other people that are working in the compassion area, she would love to hear from you. I'm just excited that this is going on, and I can assure you that people are praying for your group and what you're doing.
Well, that's what's going to make all the difference, because we both know the battle is, it's really kind of inconvenient and a pain in the physical realm, but it's even more so in the spiritual realm.
Yes, well, there's a battle to fight there.
Right.
And so those of us who know to do that, we're so good to come in under and support and help.
And you might mention we have a web page, SALT.com, SALLT, Salt and Light Leadership Training.com.
Yes. And so you can go on there and find out more about what SALT is doing, and be a prayer support. If they have any open meetings you could go to, they will let you know. Some of them are not open meetings.
Right.
But you have to have been through the training to do it. But it is wonderful that the leaders of our community are joining together to promote biblical worldview. That is so wonderful, because our culture generally has gotten so far from having a biblical worldview, and I'm just thrilled about all of this. And I just want to thank you, Robin, for sharing your heart with us today, and I just bless you in all that you're called to do. And dear ones who are watching, I just bless you. Heart Menders is here to help you to see things from a new perspective. You can see more about Heart Menders on heartmenders.org, and then all our videos are here on the heartmenders.tv website, all of our previous interviews as well as teachings, even some audios. So please be a part of us. You can write Carol Gordon at heartmenders.org for prayer, or call 495-HOPE in Oklahoma City. That's 405-495-4673. And I just bless you. Father, I just lift up to you today this audience and everyone that is hearing these words now and later. And Father, that they would be blessed to know that there is light in the darkness, and that the Salt and Light Training group is helping that for Oklahoma City, and that there would be other cities that would catch the vision. And we just thank you for all that you are doing here. We love you, Jesus, and thank you so much for loving us. Blessings, and bye for now.